Imagine the pelvis not as a passive structure, but as the body's command center, a living hinge where the upper and lower worlds meet. Suspended between the spine and the legs, it orchestrates how every joint moves, how every step lands, how every ounce of force ripples through the frame. A subtle tilt, just a few degrees forward or back, can reshape the curvature of the spine, alter muscle activation, and shift how weight spreads through the soles of your feet. This is where architecture meets emotion. The pelvis, steady yet dynamic, transforms stillness into motion. In the grand choreography of posture, this ring of bone is both stage and conductor. Viewed through the biomechanist's lens, the pelvis is a marvel of function, a stabilizing platform that channels the body's weight through the legs while maintaining spinal integrity. When it tilts even slightly forward, the lumbar curve deepens. When it tips back, the lower spine flattens and tension rises elsewhere. Shoulder and head alignment shift in response, illustrating that posture is not a local affair. It's a systemic negotiation of forces. The pelvis is the negotiator, constantly mediating between gravity and grace. Our modern lives have reshaped the human form more drastically than millennia of evolution. We sit for hours, gaze into glowing screens, and forget to move. The result? Tight hip flexors, sleepy glutes, a pelvis that drifts out of neutral. Over time, what begins as stiffness becomes a pattern. The body adapts to its environment, even when that environment is a chair. The pelvis learns our habits, storing every hour of immobility as a physical memory. This is the quiet cost of convenience, a posture shaped not by nature, but by neglect. Pelvic tilt isn't a clinical curiosity. It's the foundation of how we live, move, and perform. Whether it's an office worker struggling with lower back pain or an athlete chasing milliseconds of speed, pelvic alignment defines efficiency. Mastering this small structure improves everything: posture, power, endurance, even confidence. Understanding your pelvis is understanding your center, and learning to move from it means moving through life with purpose. Picture the everyday slump: shoulders rounding, pelvis tucking under, spine curling like a question mark. It feels harmless at first, but the body adapts until that shape becomes permanent. The pelvis, once neutral, begins to rotate, dragging the spine along. The body forgets its blueprint, and a mechanical imbalance becomes our new normal. The tragedy? It happens silently, not with pain, but with gradual loss of movement and vitality. The story of posture begins and ends with the pelvis. When it's aligned, energy flows freely through every joint. When it tilts, the entire body compensates. To restore the pelvis is to restore harmony, not just in structure, but in motion, balance, and even breath. True posture isn't about rigidity, it's about effortless balance born from awareness. Pelvic tilt describes the angle between the pelvis, femurs, and lumbar spine, a small degree of rotation that decides how we stand, move, and transfer force. In an ideal stance, the pelvis maintains a gentle forward inclination, balancing the natural curves of the spine. The key landmarks, the anterior and posterior superior iliac spines, guide the clinician's eye, revealing whether the pelvis sits in harmony or distortion. 3 deviations dominate the landscape: anterior, posterior, and lateral tilt, each telling a unique story of muscular imbalance and movement history. An anterior tilt tips the pelvis forward, deepening the curve of the lower back. It's the posture of tight hip flexors and disengaged glutes, the modern signature of sitting too long or training too much in one pattern. A posterior tilt, by contrast, tucks the pelvis under, flattening the spine and robbing it of shock absorption. And then there's the lateral tilt, when one side rises higher, shifting balance and load asymmetrically. Each of these tilts isn't just a position, it's a pattern, a story written into muscle tone and movement memory. The neutral pelvis is like a perfectly balanced bowl of water, level, steady, and calm. In this position, no muscle dominates, no joint strains. The spine sits tall, the hips move freely, and the body feels light. Achieving this state isn't about perfection, but awareness, learning how subtle shifts can bring equilibrium. Every movement of the pelvis is a conversation between opposing muscle groups. The hip flexors pull forward, the glutes pull back, the abdominals stabilize while the spinal extensors lift. When one side speaks too loudly, the other falls silent, and the pelvis listens. Functional models like Jonda's lower crossed syndrome remind us that imbalance breeds dysfunction. Tightness and weakness feed each other until harmony is lost. But the real beauty lies in the body's capacity to adapt. Through awareness and training, the orchestra can retune itself. Beneath the visible muscles lies a subtler network. Fascia connecting the feet to the skull in one continuous line. Tension anywhere along this web changes pelvic orientation. At the core of it all lies the diaphragm and pelvic floor, twin guardians of stability and breath. When they work in harmony, the body moves as one integrated whole. When they falter, the chain unravels. Every spinal curve answers to the pelvis. When the pelvis tips forward, the lumbar spine deepens, the thoracic spine compensates, the head moves forward, a chain reaction from base to crown. Reverse the tilt, and the chain reverses. Each misalignment sends ripples up and down, changing how joints bear load and how muscles sustain tension. It's not just posture, it's physics written in flesh. Our posture reflects our environment. Chairs too low, shoes too high, screens too close. Each one whispers instructions to our pelvis. The body listens, adapting silently. Over time, these small inputs sculpt long-term form. The good news? Awareness can rewrite that pattern. Adjust your chair. Move every 30 minutes. Choose shoes that let your feet feel the ground. The pelvis, ever faithful, will follow. A skilled clinician sees what others miss. They trace the ASIS-PSIS line, observe movement, palpate for asymmetry, and test flexibility. Each touch and observation builds a story. Is this tilt structural, habitual, or compensatory? Tools like inclinometers and motion capture quantify what the eye suspects, but context remains key. Not every tilt is a problem. Sometimes it's the body's clever way of adapting. The art of assessment lies in discernment, knowing when to correct and when to respect the body's design. The pelvis never stands still. As we walk, it oscillates, tilting forward and back, dropping side to side, creating a rhythm that keeps our motion smooth. In running, these oscillations amplify, fueling stride length and propulsion. But when control falters, when tilt becomes excessive, efficiency collapses and injury risk rises. Even in strength sports, a misplaced tilt under load can strain the spine or sabotage power transfer. The pelvis, when balanced, becomes the athlete's secret engine, the silent source of speed, control, and grace. Correction begins with awareness, then movement. Strengthen the glutes and core, lengthen the hip flexors, and teach the breath to stabilize from within. Dynamic drills, bridges, bird dogs, planks, retrain coordination. Ergonomic habits sustain the change. Stand, move, breathe, realign. Science agrees, strength retraining outlasts stretching alone. Balance isn't restored overnight, but with intention it becomes instinctive. Movement reborn from the inside out. For athletes, the pelvis is the hinge of performance. It determines how power flows, how efficiently force transfers. In sprinters, excessive tilt limits extension and speed. In lifters, it decides whether the spine bears load safely. Elite coaches now treat pelvic control like an essential skill, a quiet revolution in sports conditioning. When the pelvis finds its neutral, every movement becomes cleaner, faster, and more resilient. True posture isn't built in the gym, it's maintained in the quiet moments between. Every chair you sit on, every step you take, every breath you draw shapes the pelvis anew. Balance programs combining mobility, strength, and mindfulness build a resilient ecosystem of movement. The secret lies not in perfect posture, but in living posture, posture that breathes, adapts, and endures. The science of pelvic alignment rests on generations of thinkers, from Florence Kendall's clinical testing, to Thomas Meyer's facial anatomy, to Stuart McGill's spine mechanics, to Shirley Salmon's movement impairment systems. Each offered a lens to understand the body's interconnected logic. Their legacy reminds us, treat posture not as a shape to fix, but a system to understand. In the end, the pelvis is not just a bone, but a compass, pointing the body toward harmony. When aligned, energy flows with ease. When unbalanced, every joint must struggle to keep up. Neutral doesn't mean still. It means centered, alive, responsive. Through awareness, movement literacy, and consistent practice, the pelvis becomes more than anatomy. It becomes the embodiment of balance itself. When the pelvis finds its true north, the body follows, moving not just with strength, but with grace. As we close this exploration of the pelvis, the hidden compass of human balance, take a moment to feel your own alignment. Every breath, every shift in your seat, every step you take tells a quiet story of structure and adaptation. The pelvis isn't just anatomy. It's the bridge between motion and meaning, between the science of how we move and the art of how we live. If today's journey stirred your curiosity, if you found yourself rethinking posture, wondering how small shifts shape the body's entire language, then there's more waiting just beyond this moment. Follow the link in the description to dive into the full article, where every concept you heard comes alive in vivid detail. There, you'll find deeper explorations of movement, balance, biomechanics, and how the body's design can guide us towards strength and longevity. Think of it as continuing the story, not as an ending, but as an awakening. Because posture isn't a frozen pose, it's a conversation between gravity and grace, discipline and freedom. The more we listen, the more the body reveals. So take that next step. Explore, read, and rediscover the architecture within you.